I was younger, I viewed the onset of winter as an end to what has now become a perpetually unending trout season. I was born and raised on the Roaring Fork River in Colorado. From its headwaters on the Continental Divide, it tumbles and winds its way some 70 miles, picking up tributaries and momentum before colliding with the Colorado. On the coldest days, when the trout are holding tight to the bottom and largely unresponsive, you're really better off heading to a nearby tailwater. But when the temperature rises above freezing, we see massive midge hatches that can bring up almost every fish in the river. Many anglers are surprised when they see how small the midges really are, and they can't believe that trout or anything would be interested in such a small offering. But once you witness a midge hatch on the Roaring Fork in midwinter, you realize this is some of the best dry fly of the year. While the Roaring Fork can offer outstanding winter fishing in the west, it's important to remember that you don't have to freeze to catch trout this time of year. It's December in New Zealand, and on the coast, the inhabitants are cherishing the warmth of summer. In the high country, some of the tallest peaks are still covered with what's left of the winter's snow. But down in the valleys, the rivers are running cold and clear. John Gendel is a Kiwi that's been fly fishing New Zealand for over 25 years. He's also been around the world and chased everything from tarpon and bonefish in Belize to Atlantics on the Pinoy. During the New Zealand winter, he guides in Wyoming, but when the weather turns south in the northern hemisphere, he heads home. Because for him, there's nothing like stalking his home waters in search of big, wild brown trout.
And he just, that hit my heart, like, stopped. Bit the hook. Maybe I hit him just a little soft now. It's a little tentative with the 5X, and I just sort of set. It was a big tarpon throw, eh? So like you hook him, you get that first little run, a big thrash on the surface, and then the rest is kind of niggly stuff like running all around the rocks and logs, and yeah, it's nice to see him, but that's just fine netting them.
Brown trout followed the expansion of the British Empire, largely due to the advent of the ocean-going steamship. Packaged in between layers of crushed ice, moss, and charcoal, brown trout were transported to India, then Tasmania, Australia, and finally reached New Zealand in 1867. And out of all the invasive species to reach the land, the brown trout is one of the few species that they're not trying to eradicate. On most New Zealand trout streams, sight fishing is the name of the game, and it's rather common to walk great distances between spotting fish. While this is a trophy brown trout, fish like this are not uncommon. And in a country where helicopter fishing has become pretty commonplace, it's really nice to know you can still drive up to a river and walk a beautiful stream in complete solitude, casting drives to some of the most magnificent brown trout on the planet. Just off the coast of Papua New Guinea, large flocks of birds work above a school of tuna, crashing bait at the surface. During this time of year, there are almost always birds working somewhere on the horizon, and for the saltwater fly fishermen, the presence of tuna presents a great opportunity, especially for those who understand that the tuna are themselves just big bait. The coastline of Papua New Guinea is prime marlin habitat, As part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, the volcanic activity creates high-rise seamounts that, coupled with the large amounts of bait, create truly outstanding blue water fishing. On our blue water boat, a 33-foot Grady White, the crew's highly experienced when it comes to marlin and other blue water species, but not on the fly. And all of my knowledge is strictly theoretical. And the fact that none of the fly fishermen on board have ever even seen a marlin, let alone cast one, doesn't really boost the crew's confidence. In preparation for the trip, I made a bunch of flies, if you can call them that, from foam bobbers that I found at Walmart, a little spray paint, and lots of flash and feathers. Once on board the Grady White, I explained the process of catching a marlin on the fly, the only way I've actually seen it done, which was online. You get a bunch of cool looking teasers, you troll them behind the boat. When a fish appears, he's teased to the back of the boat, where an angler, ready with a fly rod, makes a cast to the fish. You hook up, and before you know it, you have a marlin to the back of the boat. Seemed easy enough.
Muchas gracias. Yeah, muy bien.
But after explaining this process to the crew, they suggest we watch them land at least one fish on conventional gear to get a sense for the fish and what we're really in for. Hemingway once wrote, in regards to marlin fishing, that anyone can hook a hungry fish who gives them enough line, doesn't backlash, and sets the hook hard enough. But actually, in the presence of these massive fish out on the open ocean, the blue water game all of a sudden feels a lot more complicated. There's the outriggers, the gear, the baits, even trolling locations and speed take a great deal of knowledge. It's quickly evident we really have a lot to learn. But with a marlin to the boat, we send out the teasers and get ready with the fly gear. Unfortunately, it's the rainy season in Papua New Guinea, and after just a few minutes, a huge storm rolls in, and monsoon-like rains force us off the water. Dawn breaks on the second largest island in the world. With the blue water boat scheduled for a day of repairs, I head out on the water with Whitney McDowell on a small, 10-foot, hard-bottomed inflatable. The morning was calm and the sea was still, so we decided to troll a few teasers while we looked for tuna. I just finished putting out the teasers and brought the boat up to speed when all of a sudden, one of the reels began to sing, and in our prop wash, the bill of a marlin ripped through the foam.
Oh. Oh my God.
In what seemed like a matter of seconds, we, the two rookies, managed to raise a marlin, tease it to the back of the boat, and hook it. While Whitney tried to wear the fish out, I started digging through all the gear on the boat, digging through all the bags, looking under all the seats, only to realize that we had left our blue water gear bag, the one with all the pliers, gloves, everything that you'd really need to land a marlin, back on the blue water boat. And about the time we came to the realization that we didn't have anything we needed, Whit had the fish to the side of the boat, and the leader within the guides. But before we had a chance to act, the fish began a blistering run, jumping and launching itself out of the water, and before long was well into the backing again. While Whit began the long, arduous process of regaining her line, I searched frantically for anything that would help us land this fish, but the best I could come up with was to use the neoprene Tybor reel cover as a glove. But my largest concern was that the reel battle would occur boat side, with our tiny inflatable taking the abuse from the marlin's dagger-like bill. All I could think about was the fish from the day before and how violently it had fought once it was alongside the boat, and now we were in the same situation in a tiny inflatable. After more than an hour, Whit had the fish back to the boat, and keeping the motor in gear to keep the fish moving and hopefully somewhat calm, I put down the camera, leadered the marlin, and eased it to the surface. And before it had a chance to erupt at the surface, I bit through the leader with my teeth, then watched the marlin disappear into the blue. It appears that the majority of the cities and towns here in Papua New Guinea are highly populated. Given all the volcanic activity, it's a really rugged, mountainous country, and this has made exploring the interior extremely difficult. It's steep terrain with thick tropical forests, but the country is covered with rivers of all sizes, and there's tons of fishing opportunities. We just don't really know too much about it. So we've been exploring all over. We've gone up these really cool creeks that are rumored to have tarpon, and didn't find any. And as of late, we've turned our attention to the Papuan black and spot-tailed bass. It's about as hot as it gets. A lot hotter than I like it. And then we get these big rainstorms in the afternoon and just get drenched, which is actually nice. It cools everything down a little bit. It's now day 5 of looking for these fish. Today we pushed up this larger river that's rumored to have spot-tailed bass, pretty thick, and spent the majority of the day trying to get up just as far as we could, which turned out to be semi-hazardous, to say the least. Swimming is not really the best option. They said getting in the water here, the deeper water here, is not a good idea. We actually got higher up this river today than our guide had ever been. So we happened upon this small community. It was just amazing to see these people all the way up this river, living without electricity, just as people have been doing here for thousands of years. We've been fishing really hard, and today was no exception. We fished just as hard as ever. I'm throwing a 10 weight with the biggest popper that I have. My buddy Cam's using conventional gear, and he's fishing as hard as he can. Because of all the rain, the water is significantly higher than we'd like it to be, and a lot of the fish have gone back into the thicker cover. We stayed with it and worked really hard all day, and finally towards the end of the day, Cam hooked up on a nice spot tail. And it was great to just see what they looked like. Pretty ferocious looking fish, to say the least. Shortly thereafter, I managed to hook up on a fish. We didn't get great footage of it because, to tell you the truth, I didn't really see it happening on the fly. When you have a guy working top water on conventional gear who's covering twice as much water, on a fly, I don't think you have as much confidence, but got lucky. Hearing the stories from these guides and the locals about how big these fish get, I'm intrigued, and I think I'll have to come back. In Texas, especially in South Texas, fishing and hunting are as ingrained in the lifestyle as the breakfast taco and country music. Here you can shoot ducks in the morning, bust coveys of quail before lunch, and chase redfish in the afternoon. And with the decoys pulled and limited out on quail, there's only one thing left to do. Jeff McDowell and Ethan Wells are headed to some unnamed flats outside of Rockport, Texas. Ethan's been stalking the flats of the Texas coast in search of redfish and speckled trout for over a decade.
There was about probably 7 to 10 fish, and we'll get in those little groups, and they just run down these sand shorelines, and they're just flushing shrimp and small bait fish, but mostly primarily shrimp to the surface. And you'll see the shrimp just kind of pop out, and those fish will just crash. You can hear them coming from a long distance. We saw those fish a good 200 to 300 yards up, and just saw the wake, and the way that they were moving, we could tell they were redfish. As they got closer, we could hear them, and until we finally saw them with their backs out and popping the shrimp and stuff on the surface.
Jeff McDowell moved to Texas from Minnesota to manage a fly shop, and never left. And with year-round fishing and some of the best bird hunting in the States, it's easy to see why. While Jeff and Ethan start looking for the next tailor, just down the coast, Jeff's mother, Susie McDowell, and guide Chuck Nizer are deep into redfish.